So yeah, man. Thanks for responding to my reaching out. Yeah, I love your film. So let's start back from the beginning. Mr. Candis, you growing up in Baltimore, and how was that like growing up in Baltimore?
Oh man, to be a child of Baltimore City and to grow up, in the late '80s.
Mhm.
Listen, I remember my first pair of Air Jordans that my grandfather bought me one Saturday morning.
Mhm.
Um, I remember the most that I always come back to is when I really fell in love with movies. And it's
Mhm.
because, my mom and my dad would faithfully take me to see films on Sundays at a movie
Mhm.
theater down in the Inner Harbor.
Mhm.
And, to me, man, that was the most magical moment, to be a kid and to watch movies. But then also, too, as I've gotten older, I realized that for me, it's when we were the most happiest as a family
Mhm.
watching movies in a movie theater. So I feel like as an artist and as a filmmaker, I'm just always trying to get back to that feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You also said, also I read in an interview you did a while ago that your grandfather had like a huge VHS collection. So that's how you guys started as well.
Oh man, like them VHS tapes, man. And just to, it was the VHS collection, but then also my dad had a way of like, hey, I'm gonna show you rated R movies. Don't tell your mom.
Right.
So, and it's one of those things where, I'm like a 9, 10-year-old kid. I never forget, man. I saw it was like around the same time I saw David Cronenberg's The Fly
Right.
and I saw Prince's Purple Rain.
Right.
And if you know these movies, there's no reason a 10-year-old should be watching these movies. But I
Right.
just being like, man, I have no business watching these movies, but I'm so happy I'm getting to see them. And then there's something like, especially with Cronenberg's The Fly. Well, later you come to find out it's the genius
Mhm.
of David Cronenberg. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. I'm a huge Prince fan, by the way. Got
Okay.
vinyls in my house and stuff like that. So it's funny that you like went to go see Prince, Purple
That's,
Rain, like live and direct, like in theater and stuff like that.
no, but that actually, so The Fly, I remember seeing in the movie theater, but Prince's Purple Rain actually was some neighbors on our street, and she was older, and I had a crush on her, and she was
Mhm.
watching Purple Rain on VHS.
Mhm.
And I never forget sneaking watching it as she was watching Purple Rain.
Mhm. That's crazy. That's crazy. So, like, how big was your grandfather's collection? Was it like huge, or was it like medium
Gosh.
size? Or
Oh my gosh, it's like massive. And so like I can't tell you how many times I watched Police Academy over
Mhm.
and over again. The Police Academy movies on VHS tape. Richard Pryor's The Toy,
Mhm.
um, which, talk about problematic and probably won't hold up in today's day and age. But man, for the time, oh, The Toy,
Right.
something so special and wonderful. Of course, it's Richard Pryor. But
Right.
so yeah, like literally just, I mean, you would just plow through these VHS movies, Rambo and all of these films. Yeah.
That's dope. And you got your first start as a producer, actually, with a film called Meta, right?
Oh wow, you just look
Yeah.
you digging way back. Um, I was like, so yes, and so that's when I
Hmm.
got to USC Film School, or as they call it now, the School of Cinematic Arts, and a big part of going to SC, for me, it was either, try to get to New York and get to NYU or get to California, LA to go to USC because
Hmm.
that's Lucas and Ron Howard. But then John Singleton, right? That was the
Right.
thing. And
Hmm.
this guy went to USC Film School. And so I get there
Hmm.
and I'm in film production. And film production is the most competitive and most challenging film major of all the majors
Hmm.
because you're having to do your regular course study while actually go out and make films, make short films on the weekends and then come back on
Hmm.
Mondays and you have a little projector in one hand and a
Hmm.
cassette player in the other. You
Hmm.
get to your class, you turn the lights off, you shoot the projector against the wall,
Right.
get to the countdown leader, and as soon as the countdown leader hits the 2 pop, you hit play on the cassette player so you can have sync sound. And so I was the last class at USC to shoot Super 8. It went digital the very next semester.
Wow.
It's to that point of Meta was the first undergraduate thesis film at USC that I produced. And I pride myself, being from Baltimore and being someone that I believe I'm a relatable person. I was able to get my crew free food. That was a big part of producing.
Right.
We had to feed the crew with no money.
Right.
And I called the In-N-Out Corporation. I got to the head lady, got her on the phone. Right. And she goes, I normally don't do this, but it's something about you I like. So we're gonna take care of your film crew.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's crazy. Like, that's just like the ingenuity that I feel like a lot of like specifically like Black filmmakers, it's like we have to like be the lawyer and like the barber and the makeup artist and the producer and the director and the screenwriter and the actor. Like we have to be like a Swiss Army knife of like productions and stuff like that. And funny enough, like, with your first actual like directing forte with Sonny Liston, which is like Sonny Liston, your first foray into filmmaking, like how was that as a director? Because I was the budget like, I think the budget was what, 24,000 or something like that, around that range or something.
Man, you're like the Nardwuar of film.
I'm trying to be, man.
you literally just dug into my thesis directorial debut at SC, where in essence, when you go to USC, they pretty much say you should have 2 things when you leave. And if you leave without these 2 things, you did yourself a disservice. One being a short film that shows that you're a director, and your first feature screenplay to give yourself an opportunity to make your first movie. And man, when I tell you, it was one of the, if not most intimidating experiences as a filmmaker, because first you got to raise the money.
Right.
And once again, remember, I shot that on Super 16. There is no digital. Digital doesn't exist yet. So it comes down to, you got to get a grant. So I got a Coca-Cola grant. I found this thing that, and I'm sure it still exists today. So any young filmmakers listening to this who are in school or trying to make things, they have this thing set up through most Fortune 500 companies where if you find an employee that works at the company, it literally can be anyone from the custodial staff all the way up to the CEO. If they write you a check on behalf of your short film or your piece of art that you're making, the company will match it. And so I literally just had a production manager who I was a music video PA for. I used to PA video sets, and she had a relative who worked at Coca-Cola. And that's how I literally was able to get that money. And then I wrote back home to my family and the church, and everybody helped me get that money. But actually making a short film, dude, it was daunting, because you get to SC and you see all of these brilliant young filmmakers, and you're like, what, these kids, did they go to some special film camp in the summers that I didn't know about?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. What was the most like daunting task on that, like as your first directorial short? Like what was like a problem that you came to and that you like pretty much like overcame on set?
Well, so to your point that you referenced earlier, those early years coming through film school, you're doing everything. You're wearing all the hats. You're producing, you're writing, you're directing, you're craft servicing, you make sure your crew eats. And so, you don't have the, you don't have the opportunity or the blessing to just focus on being creative. But really, it's the first opportunity that you really get to see when you sit down in front of that laptop and you create a world, you create characters, you create story. That's your first time of getting to seeing going from the laptop, from the page to actually onto film and working with actors. And I think that's the toughest thing really that you learn quickly too, is being able to communicate with actors, especially when it's child actors, when it's kids, because lead with the young boy. Yeah.
And also a special needs kid as well in the film as well. So that was, but I feel like if you like how you are, you're just so cool and relatable and stuff like that. I felt like that was the film to really like showcase your talents and say like, all right, this is like not easy working with children on set, but like you made it look easy. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't nervous, like doubling back, like when you first went to USC, like traveling across country and stuff, like from Baltimore to, Los Angeles, to USC and like an infinity, you know what I'm saying? Mom was like, not sure if you really wanted to do this and stuff. Like how nerve wracking was that?
Oh, I mean, listen, I'd never been to California, never been to LA. And oftentimes our relationship with these places we've never been, especially a place like LA, comes through media, comes through film and television, right? So my idea of LA, Showtime Lakers, is NWA and Dr. Dre. It's John Singleton's Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
And so first of all,
dog.
yes. Nobody can prepare you for just how vastly large Los Angeles is.
That's a fact.
Just the terrain alone.
Yeah.
And I think that often a lot of us East Coast folks come out and while they're big cities to us, they're still small, confined spaces.
Right. People
fail to realize or forget that Los Angeles is a sprawling desert.
Right.
The place is huge.
Right.
So that alone is a very it really broadens your worldview just based upon topography alone. And then, but then it becomes this idea of, when we get to SC and my parents are like, and mainly my pops is like, he looks at the fee bill. He's like, man, I have no idea how we're going to pay for this. I was just excited that, oh my God, I got accepted into USC Film School. Oh my God, I get to go to LA and really put my foot on the path along going after my dream. And you get there and you're like, oh man, this is crazy expensive. So I would work in PA, be a production assistant on music video and commercial sets. And I'm really, really thankful for that extended education of actually being on sets early, but it does a very mental, emotional thing on you because I always say going to SC is like going to Alabama to play football.
Right.
Or going to Duke or Carolina to play basketball. You've fortunately been accepted into this great institution of the craft of filmmaking. And now you're the low man on the totem pole, the production assistant. And I was a PA for a really, really long time because I was just writing the whole time, writing and working and experimenting, working to be a director. But that's the part of it, man, that I'm so thankful for. I was getting such an extended education on set. And it's amazing the things that you learn just by osmosis that you're not even aware you're learning.
Right.
Yeah.
So out of your professors at USC, Mr. Casper, Dr. Doyd, which one was like your favorite? Like what class was your favorite? Like the blaxploitation class or like the Hitchcock class? Like which one did you draw to as a director, or you just soaking it all in and being a sponge?
Well, I mean, I'm so happy you reference the SC experience, but mainly those two professors, Dr. Todd Boyd and Drew Casper. And to me, they're two professors where you're fortunate enough to go into an institution, they're unforgettable. And Casper for that Hitchcock class because he is running you through a boot camp of the master of filmmaking. And you literally are showing up, and you think about it, as kids, we don't, of course, iconically who Hitchcock is, but to really be versed in his work and his filmography and learn how he made his films and experience them is unreal. But hands down, oh man, Dr. Boyd, Todd is like, let me describe to you a Dr. Boyd class, like race, sex, and politics. So Todd has the auditorium class. Casper does too. It's the biggest venue. It's one of them like movie scene, when you see the characters on screen in college in those big auditorium classes.
Right.
And so classic Todd, you show up and you're sitting in the auditorium and either a Nas album is playing, Jay-Z or Biggie.
Right.
Todd very strategically has you basically listen to half, if not the entire album before he lectures. So he's setting the tone for, as he calls it, his spit, as he's going to now get up before you and freestyle his lecture. And he's getting into everything of the perspective of film based upon race, based upon class, based upon gender, which is really brilliant and a really great experience, especially, being Black in America, because oftentimes we've grown up or we continue to see characters on screen that don't represent us.
Right.
And so when you take Todd's, say, Black exploitation class, he's running you through the pantheon of these wonderful films that were made that we never saw.
Right.
And you're getting to experience them in a darkened theater on the largest screen, the way we're all supposed to experience cinema. Meanwhile, he's the flyest professor you would ever want to meet.
Right.
He got on patent leather Jordans. He got the Gucci bucket hat.
Yeah.
And it's just, he has such a lasting impression based upon literally he's the hip hop professor. Yeah.
Dope. So boom, you graduated. And what's that like life after graduation? Because this is before you did your first acting role on 8 Simple Rules, right? Like this is before. So what's that time before you started getting in the game of the film industry?
Look, so I just want you to know that I have paid off all my student loans. They are no you done dug all the way in. Man, I'm so happy you referenced 8 Simple Rules, man, because that was John Ritter's last episode.
Right. Oh, wow. Whoa. Yes. What?
The legendary John Ritter. Now, while we didn't share a scene together, we shared the elevator together that day.
Wow.
And I had finished doing my scene. I was leaving set and John Ritter was coming to set. And we had this moment on the elevator. And I'm just trying my hardest not to geek out.
Right.
But yeah, literally. And that was there. I think that was my first TV credit was on 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. Yeah.
That's crazy. Now, was a Letter to Hip Hop before? A Letter to Hip Hop was before then, but that wasn't that was a film. That was your first acting credit. Your first TV credit was 8 Simple Rules. That's crazy.
Yeah. And my Letter to Hip Hop was really cool because that's what my good buddy that I went to SC with, Malik Vital, who directed Imperial Dreams with John Boyega and Keke Palmer. And that was a really wonderful time for us that I think really recharged our energy and passion to be filmmakers and to be directors, because me and Malik both had went to SC, graduated,
Mm-hmm.
and were production assistants forever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we were PAs on the back of the tailgate, as we say it, for a really long time. And there was this 48-hour film festival.
Mm-hmm.
And Malik was like, come on, man, we got to do this. Like, hey, will you please help me? Will you produce it? And I was like, yeah, of course, dog. So we did it. I never forget, Derek Luke was on the jury of that festival.
Wait, what?
Yes, Derek Luke. When we went to the orientation for that festival, like where they start the clock to give you your 40 hours, I met Lisa Bonet and Zoe Kravitz.
Right.
Yeah, just one of those things where it was so auspicious that I meet them at this moment, and then we ended up winning that festival. Yeah.
That's great. Also, too, like LA is big, but LA is also like small, and like you literally can be like 1 degree of like separation from like somebody else. Like, oh yeah, like my cousin's like Issa Rae, or like I know such and such and such. You know, like that's crazy. That's crazy. So your first feature directorial debut, 07, Young Caesar. How was that? Like, how was that working with like a cast? Was that your first time working with like a cast that big, of that size?
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like I often don't like to refer to it as my directorial debut, but this is what I do say about it, and I'm so thankful. For me, it's almost like when Spielberg and those guys made movies for Roger Corman, made B movies.
Right. Okay.
It literally, for me, was a 10-day grad school. I was thrown in the fire to make this project, and it was 10 days and just thrown in the fire as a director. And it really, really, that experience prepared me later to go on to be able to make Love and to make films, because the thing that I learned the most that really helped me. So, all right, when you're in film school, you write your little screenplay, you get your little storyboards, and you can take your time. And I always say what happens is you have this much time to get this much material. Well, once you get beyond that and you get into working in the world professionally, making films, working on episodic TV, whatever it is, often what happens is the equation is inverted, meaning you now oftentimes have this much material that you got to get in this much time.
Right.
And so it really prepares you for like planning out, having a strategic plan of how you're going to capture the performance and tell the story, but then also being very, very versatile into, okay, I'm running out of time. The sun's going down. I'm working with a child actor, child labor union. Literally, they're standing over there, and I'm going to use the key in 10 minutes. On the 11th minute, this becomes illegal.
Right.
So then it's like, okay, what would Spielberg do? Meaning, where would you put the camera to capture the performance that then becomes a beautiful dance of the camera and the choreography and the movement of the actors in the space that doesn't need a lot of cuts and a lot of coverage. Yeah.
So was that so post that, still like writing, because we're going to like fast forward to Love, right? Was that the first, like one of the first times where you started working with the Film Independent Lab, or did you start working with the Film Independent Lab when you thought of the idea of Love? You and Justin started writing that. Yeah,
that was my first experience and first moments working with Film Independent. I never forget, I always joke, I had applied to a lab of theirs early on and got rejected. And it was like the entry level lab. And I actually did Film Independent kind of in reverse. So I did the director's lab and fast track programs. And then I went back and did the Project Involve lab later. But I I deeply, wholeheartedly love that organization because they stand in a space to really push and promote filmmakers who just can be unseen
Right.
or aren't given these opportunities. So yeah, I mean, listen, I always tell people I preach the great gospel of film independent for sure. Yeah.
Dope, dope. So you started working on Love in '03. 8 years on the grind, 45 drafts. Can you talk about that process and rewriting? Like, rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. Because me personally, like I love rewrites to a certain extent. Like I'm gonna be honest, you know what I'm saying, full transparency. But like 45 rewrites, that's insane. You know what I'm saying? But that also is like very normal as a screenwriter director. It's like you rewrite, you're doing the pre-rewrite before you get on set. Then on set, you also like are rewriting still. You know what I'm saying? So like talk about that process of like 45 drafts and the years it took to get this story made.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you hear the adage, writing is rewriting.
Right.
And you hear it, you're like, oh, okay, somebody made, okay, that got a flow to it. But it's not until you're actually in the thick of things and you experience writing is rewriting, you're like, oh my God, yes, writing is
right.
In Love. But I will say, honestly, the script just kept getting better.
Right.
Now, but that doesn't mean that every screenplay and every writer director has to do that many drafts to get to the movie they want to make. The bottom line is that always be open to the discovery of what new can happen on the page, but then ultimately know, as they say, pencils down. When do you get to your point where you go, okay, I'm now ready to make the film? Because you can get stuck in this endless spiral of rewriting. And then when you're fortunate enough to get actors, oftentimes, actors are very intelligent individuals who immensely know their characters and can reveal things to you about their characters that maybe you're not even aware of. So that's the collaborative part of the art form is really making sure you hear actors, but making sure you hear them, but as the auteur and the author, making sure you hold on to the original intent of what these characters and what the story is saying.
Can you discuss like a specific scene or like sequence in that film to where it was like really tough for you that day and like how you like pretty much navigated through it?
Yeah. So one important thing I think for everyone listening, and especially if you want to make movies with kids, for me, it's always about what's your voice? Like, what are you wanting to say as a filmmaker? What are going to be the main core thematics of the stories you tell? And I feel like for me, for the most part, it's always going to be characters searching for family.
Right.
And usually, specifically speaking, boys searching for father figures. So, but with that being said, you are going to have to pound the pavement to find really special, wonderful child actors.
Right.
And they're out there, but it definitely takes a divine act of God, a higher power, to lead you to find these special kids. Because as we know, you also can have a very kind of show business kid is informing the idea of acting and not being.
Right.
And that's what falls flat on its face. And so oftentimes they'll say 50% of a director's job before they even make the film is the casting. Did you nail the casting? Some people will go even far as say 80%. Before you roll any film, the casting has to be right. And so to answer your question directly, there's the moment where, basically, they're at Mr. Fisher's house. This is the moment that the dysfunction of this family of these different generation of these men. And then, things go bad and we see, the deceit that has happened between Fish and Vincent. And then ultimately with the killing that happens in this moment between Woody and Vincent in the woods, where Woody has the opportunity to, he could kill his uncle if he wanted to, but ultimately he chooses mercy, right? He chooses grace to give to his uncle, and ultimately the uncle, no spoilers, but ultimately his uncle does pass away. But in that one particular moment, that is a very, very intense scene that is written on the page. And now you show up on the day, or in my case, I think I had a day and a half to shoot that. And you got to make it work. You got to capture it. But what often happens in independent film is you never have enough time.
Right.
And not only not having enough time, there are no pickups. There are no reshoots. And so that's the ultimate testament to Michael Rainey Jr. I mean, kid at that age, he was such an old soul, wise beyond his years. Oh my gosh. Like I'm so fortunate in that moment because I always loved, Natalie Portman as a kid in The Professional, Nico Hughes and Jack the Bear, Freddie Highmore in Finding Neverland, all of these really wonderful kids, Haley Joel and The Sixth Sense. And I reference all of those great movies because of those great child performances. Now, Michael Rainey Jr.'s performance in Love is that caliber of a child performance. And so to answer your question, that scene that night is so hard because there's so much to capture and there's so much coverage that I'm like, I get to the point where it's between Vincent and Woody in the woods. And I mean, it's like, I want to say by that time it's 2:30 a.m. Now, mind you, we've been at set all day.
Right.
And little Mike has been asleep taking a nap. But this is one of the most emotional moments of the film. And literally they're putting the condor in the woods to get light on the scene. And I'm just literally just watching the clock because the sun's going to come up literally in a couple of hours. And I'm like, oh my God, I think this situation has finally defeated me. Like, I think I've finally, like I've lost the rein. Like this horse has bucked me. And we get to the point for the scene and I look at my AD Toby and he's like, man, I mean, you're going to get 2 shots at it.
Right.
And so we wake Michael up and I'm like, all right, Mike, this is it. Like, this is a part of the casting that you went through with, with Pat Moran and your chemistry read with Common in Baltimore. Can you become emotionally available? Can you get to a broken place? Yeah, Sheldon, I'm good. And I'm like, he's a 10-year-old boy that just came out of a nap at 2:30 in the morning.
Right.
And when I tell you the kid hit a switch, it was one of the most brilliant moments for me as a filmmaker I've ever experienced, because that's when you get to see an actor do something really, really special that directly lines up with how you envisioned it in your head when you wrote it in the screenplay.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that was a great performance. Even the ensemble cast, you got Megan Good in there. You got Charles S. Dutton. You know what I'm saying? You got the late, great Michael K. Williams. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was just such a great cast and overlooked film that I feel like everybody should still check out, on Netflix. I think, it's still on Netflix. Check that film out. Last question. Directing, Netflix, working with Ava on Cherish the Day, Naomi, television. um, just a bunch of different projects, a gamut across the board, a rainbow of different companies. As a PK, a preacher's kid, did you ever see yourself growing up being the success you are today? Because I'm a preacher's kid too, you know what I'm saying? Come from the church, you know what I'm saying? So
it's it's such a trip to me because I became a preacher's kid at 30. Like, like, but my mom goes back to school and gets her master's in theology, and and becomes a minister, and it's interesting. My mother often references that filmmaking and storytelling is my ministry, and I think ministry is a word. I often repeat from the Book of Joy, the Dalai Lama and the late great Desmond Tutu, that they said in that book, it is of our greatest responsibility as human beings to be in service of others. And I feel like that's what the word ministry is. When you take away the context of a Christian ideology or any religious practice or idea, how are we serving each other?
Right.
And so, this podcast is your ministry. You as a story taker and a filmmaker, that's the gospel that you put into the world, So, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you, Mr. Candis. Looking forward to your future films. And I thank you so much for being on the podcast today. You need anything in the future, help with anything, just let me know, you know what I'm saying? Just let me know. I'm an email away, but I really appreciate you doing this. I really do. I thank you so much,
man. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see your next project, the stories that you tell, because listen, man, we're all trying to, and we're pushing towards telling the next story that moves someone's heart, So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, you have a great day. I appreciate you, sir.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. All right.
Peace.
Peace.